Your soulmate was about to give up. Then God intervened, a divine message. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this fictional story begins during one of the darkest nights of a person's life. The silence felt heavier than ever before. The questions seemed endless, and hope appeared to be fading with every passing day. This is not a prediction about your life or someone else's. It is a fictional story about faith, perseverance, healing, and discovering hope when everything seems lost. The evening sky was covered with dark clouds, and a gentle rain tapped against the window as someone sat alone, exhausted from carrying burdens no one else could see. They had spent months trying to stay strong, convincing everyone around them that everything was fine, while quietly fighting discouragement within their own heart. Every unanswered prayer, every unexpected delay, and every closed door made them wonder if continuing to hope was worth the effort. They were not angry. They were simply tired. Tired of waiting. Tired of uncertainty. Tired of believing that tomorrow might be different while each new day looked exactly like the last. As midnight approached, they whispered a quiet prayer. It was not filled with impressive words or dramatic emotions. It was honest, simple, and deeply personal. God, if you are still leading me, please give me the strength to take one more step. I don't need to know the entire future. I only need enough courage to face tomorrow. After speaking those words, a deep stillness settled over the room. Nothing around them changed immediately, yet something inside them began to shift. The fear that had been growing for so long no longer felt as powerful as it once had. My beloved child, don't skip this part, because the heart of this fictional story begins here. The next morning, the sun rose with extraordinary beauty. Golden light filled the horizon, birds welcomed the new day with joyful songs, and the cool breeze carried a quiet reminder that every sunrise is a new beginning. Standing beneath the morning sky, they realized that sometimes what feels like God's intervention in this fictional story is not the sudden removal of every problem. Instead, it is receiving the strength to keep walking when giving up seems easier. It is finding peace before circumstances change. It is discovering hope before every answer arrives. Throughout the day, small moments encouraged them in unexpected ways. A kind word from a stranger. A thoughtful message from a friend. A passage from a favorite book that arrived at exactly the right moment. None of these events solved every difficulty, but together they reminded them that goodness still existed all around them. They understood that hope often returns quietly, one small blessing at a time. Every act of kindness became another reason to keep believing that difficult seasons do not last forever. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this fictional story now reveals one of its deepest truths. There are moments when people believe they have reached the end of their strength. Yet those moments often become the beginning of remarkable personal growth. Challenges teach resilience. Waiting develops patience. Disappointment deepens compassion. And faith grows strongest when we continue choosing hope even while the road ahead remains uncertain. The greatest miracles sometimes happen inside the heart long before circumstances begin to change. As evening returned, they no longer looked toward tomorrow with fear. Instead, they carried quiet confidence. They understood that every challenge had prepared them for greater wisdom, every delay had strengthened their character, and every difficult season had brought them closer to becoming the person they were meant to be. They no longer wished to escape every hardship. They simply wanted to continue living each day with honesty, humility, kindness, and faith. My beloved child, don't skip these closing words, because they prepare the way for the next chapter of this fictional journey. The story was never about someone giving up forever. It was about discovering that hope can return even after the darkest night. As another sunrise stretched across the earth, they stepped forward with peaceful hearts, choosing faith over fear, gratitude over despair, compassion over bitterness, and courage over uncertainty. And somewhere beyond that beautiful horizon, another unforgettable chapter was quietly waiting to begin. My beloved child, don't skip this chapter, because in this fictional story, the morning after the darkest night became the beginning of a life-changing season. Listen carefully, because the person who had nearly surrendered to discouragement discovered that hope often returns quietly. It does not always arrive through extraordinary events or dramatic miracles. Sometimes it comes through the gentle reminder that you are not alone, that every difficult season has meaning, and that every sunrise carries another opportunity to begin again. The golden light of dawn spread across the hills as they stepped outside with a heart that still carried questions but no longer carried the same fear. They breathed deeply, listening to the peaceful sounds of the morning. The wind moved gently through the trees, birds sang without worry about tomorrow, and the beauty of creation reminded them that every new day is a gift. For the first time in many months, they stopped asking why every challenge had happened. Instead, they asked how they could become a better person because of those challenges. That single change transformed the way they viewed every obstacle. Throughout the day, unexpected moments continued encouraging them. An elderly neighbor shared a story about overcoming years of hardship without losing hope. A child smiled with innocent joy while playing in the park, reminding them that happiness often grows from simple moments. A friend unexpectedly reached out with words of encouragement, not realizing those few sentences arrived exactly when they were needed most. These ordinary encounters became extraordinary reminders that kindness has the power to restore weary hearts. They realized that hope is often delivered through people who simply choose to care. My beloved child, don't skip this part, because the emotional heart of this fictional story begins unfolding here. As evening approached, they sat quietly beside a peaceful lake, watching the sunlight reflect across the water. In that silence, they realized that what they had called God's intervention in this fictional story was not merely about changing circumstances overnight. It was about changing the condition of the heart. Fear had slowly been replaced with courage. Despair had given way to gratitude. Restlessness had become peaceful trust. The greatest miracle was not found in what happened around them, it was found in who they were becoming within. Meanwhile, another person in this fictional story was experiencing a similar awakening. They, too, had spent many months carrying silent burdens. Yet without fully understanding why, they began feeling a renewed desire to forgive old hurts, rebuild broken friendships, and appreciate the people who had remained beside them through every season. They realized that life is too precious to waste carrying resentment. Every act of forgiveness made their heart lighter, and every honest conversation strengthened the relationships they valued most. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this fictional story now reveals one of its greatest lessons. Every person reaches moments when giving up seems easier than continuing. Yet those very moments often become turning points. When we choose hope over despair, kindness over bitterness, honesty over fear, and faith over doubt, our lives begin changing in ways that cannot always be seen immediately. Character grows quietly. Wisdom develops patiently. Love becomes stronger through perseverance. Those invisible victories eventually shape every visible part of life. As another beautiful sunrise painted the sky with brilliant shades of gold and blue, they smiled with peaceful confidence. They no longer measured progress by how quickly every dream came true. They measured it by the peace growing within their heart, the compassion they showed toward others, and the gratitude they carried into every ordinary day. They understood that every faithful step mattered, even when the destination remained beyond the horizon. My beloved child, don't skip these closing words, because the next chapter will reveal the most meaningful turning point of this fictional journey. The darkest night had passed, not because every question had been answered, but because hope had returned. And as the morning light stretched farther across the path ahead, they walked forward with renewed courage, knowing that every challenge had prepared them for a future built upon faith, integrity, compassion, and enduring hope. My beloved child, don't skip this chapter, because in this fictional story, the greatest change did not happen around them, it happened within them. Listen carefully, because after the long season of waiting, the heart that had once been overwhelmed by discouragement was slowly becoming filled with quiet confidence. The road ahead was still unknown, but they no longer feared what tomorrow might bring. They had discovered that true peace is not found when every problem disappears. It is found when the heart learns to trust, to forgive, and to keep moving forward one faithful step at a time. As another sunrise filled the horizon with brilliant shades of gold and blue, they opened their window and welcomed the cool morning breeze. The world looked the same as it had the day before, yet everything felt different. They noticed the beauty in the ordinary, the gentle sound of birds singing, the warmth of sunlight touching the trees, and the smiles of people beginning another day. They realized that many of life's greatest blessings had always been present, but fear had kept them from seeing them. Gratitude opened their eyes to miracles hidden in everyday moments. Throughout the day, they chose to live differently. Instead of speaking words of doubt, they offered encouragement. Instead of focusing on disappointments, they celebrated small victories. Instead of asking why difficult seasons had lasted so long, they thanked God in this fictional story for the strength those seasons had produced. Every conversation became an opportunity to bring hope. Every act of kindness became another reminder that love is most powerful when expressed through ordinary actions. Their heart grew lighter with every generous choice they made. My beloved child, don't skip this part, because the emotional heart of this fictional story unfolds here. As evening settled across the sky, they returned to the quiet place where they had once nearly given up. Standing there again, they remembered the tears, the unanswered questions, and the loneliness they had once carried. Yet this time they did not feel sadness. They felt gratitude. They understood that if every prayer had been answered immediately, they would never have learned patience. If every obstacle had disappeared instantly, they would never have discovered resilience. If life had always been easy, they might never have grown into someone capable of comforting others during difficult seasons. Every challenge had quietly become part of a greater purpose. Meanwhile, another person in this fictional story was experiencing a similar transformation. They had spent so much time worrying about what had been lost that they almost missed the blessings still surrounding them. One evening they decided to write down every reason they had to be thankful. At first the list seemed short, but as they continued writing, it grew longer and longer. Family. Friends. Good health. New opportunities. Lessons learned. Forgiveness received. Hope restored. By the time they finished, they realized their life had always been filled with gifts, they had simply been looking in the wrong direction. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this fictional story now shares one of its most meaningful truths. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually preparation. Sometimes closed doors protect us from paths that are not meant for us. Sometimes the silence teaches lessons that constant activity never could. And sometimes the greatest answer to prayer is not an immediate change in circumstances but a transformed heart that can walk through every circumstance with courage, humility, wisdom, and unwavering faith. As another dawn broke across the horizon, they smiled with peaceful hearts. They no longer lived waiting for one extraordinary miracle to change everything. They understood that every sunrise is a miracle. Every breath is a gift. Every opportunity to forgive is a blessing. Every chance to encourage another person is a sacred responsibility. They walked into the new day determined to reflect kindness wherever they went, trusting that even the smallest acts of love can change someone's life forever. My beloved child, don't skip these closing words, because the next chapter will lead to the beautiful conclusion of this fictional journey. The season of almost giving up had become the season of discovering purpose. The tears had become testimonies of perseverance. The waiting had become wisdom. And as the golden light of another morning stretched across the earth, they walked forward with renewed hope, believing that a heart guided by faith, compassion, honesty, and love will always find peace, no matter where the road may lead. My beloved child, don't skip this chapter, because in this fictional story, the journey was approaching a turning point that neither heart had expected. Listen carefully, because after choosing hope instead of despair day after day, they began noticing that life was opening doors they had never imagined. The circumstances around them had not changed overnight, but their perspective had. They no longer measured every day by what was missing. Instead, they measured it by every opportunity to show kindness, every lesson that strengthened their character, and every reason they still had to be thankful. That quiet change became the foundation of everything that followed. The morning sky was clear, and the first rays of sunlight stretched across the fields like streams of golden light. Standing beneath the open sky, they smiled with peaceful hearts. The worries that once kept them awake through long nights no longer held the same power. They had learned that every sunrise carries fresh mercy, fresh courage, and another chance to become the person they were created to be. They understood that faith is not about never facing storms. Faith is choosing to keep walking even while the clouds remain overhead. Throughout the day, they met people whose lives quietly reflected the same lesson. An elderly woman spoke about how years of hardship had taught her gratitude. A young father worked tirelessly to provide for his family while never losing his gentle spirit. A volunteer patiently cared for strangers without expecting praise or recognition. Watching these ordinary people reminded them that greatness is often hidden inside ordinary acts of compassion. True strength is revealed through consistency, humility, and the willingness to love others even when life becomes difficult. My beloved child, don't skip this part, because the emotional heart of this fictional story is revealed here. That evening, as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, they returned to the place where they had once whispered a desperate prayer, believing they had reached the end of their strength. Standing there again, they looked back over every difficult chapter. They remembered the disappointment, the loneliness, the unanswered questions, and the temptation to give up. But they also remembered every unexpected encouragement, every kind word that arrived at the perfect moment, every quiet answer that came through reflection, and every lesson that had transformed their heart. They finally understood that what seemed like delays had often been opportunities to grow into someone wiser, stronger, and more compassionate. Meanwhile, another heart in this fictional story was learning the same lesson. They had spent so much time searching for extraordinary signs that they almost overlooked the quiet miracles happening around them every day. They noticed how forgiveness restored peace inside the heart. They noticed how gratitude made even ordinary mornings feel extraordinary. They noticed how serving others brought joy that success alone could never provide. Slowly, they realized that the greatest blessings are often discovered in the simplest moments of life. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this fictional story now shares one of its most meaningful truths. Every season has a purpose, even when we cannot immediately understand it. Waiting teaches patience. Challenges build perseverance. Loss deepens compassion. And hope grows strongest when it is chosen during uncertain times. A life rooted in faith is not free from hardship, but it is strengthened by the confidence that every experience can become part of a greater story of growth and healing. As another sunrise filled the sky with breathtaking colors, they stepped into the new day carrying peaceful hearts and grateful spirits. They no longer feared what tomorrow might hold because they had discovered that courage is not found in knowing the future. It is found in faithfully living today with honesty, kindness, humility, and love. Every conversation became another opportunity to encourage. Every challenge became another invitation to trust. Every sunrise became another reminder that hope is renewed each morning. My beloved child, don't skip these closing words, because the final chapter of this fictional journey is almost here. The season of discouragement had become a season of purpose. The nights of uncertainty had given way to mornings filled with hope. And as the light of a brand new day stretched across the horizon, they walked forward without fear, carrying hearts transformed by faith, strengthened by perseverance, and filled with compassion for everyone they would meet along the road ahead. The most beautiful ending was now waiting just beyond the next sunrise. My beloved child, don't skip this chapter, because in this fictional story, something remarkable was happening beneath the surface, even though no one around them could see it. Listen carefully, because there are seasons when life appears completely unchanged from the outside while, within the heart, an extraordinary transformation is quietly taking place. The person who had once stood on the edge of giving up now awakened each morning with a renewed determination to live differently. They were no longer driven by fear of failure or controlled by unanswered questions. Instead, they were guided by a growing desire to live with honesty, compassion, patience, and unwavering faith. As another sunrise spread across the horizon, they stepped outside and paused to watch the golden light slowly cover the fields, the trees, and the quiet streets. They noticed how every new morning arrived without hurry. The sun never rushed to appear, yet it never failed to rise. That simple truth reminded them that many of life's greatest works unfold gradually. Seeds planted in faith require time before they become fruitful. Character grows slowly through daily choices. Wisdom is built through countless ordinary moments. They smiled, realizing they no longer needed everything to happen immediately. They had learned to trust the process of becoming. Throughout the day, they found opportunities to encourage others in ways they had never considered before. A coworker struggling with discouragement received words of genuine hope. A lonely neighbor found comfort through a simple conversation over a cup of tea. A family member carrying silent burdens discovered someone willing to listen without judgment. None of these moments attracted attention from the world, yet each act of kindness became a quiet reminder that love expressed through service carries extraordinary power. They understood that the greatest influence often comes not from grand achievements but from faithful compassion shown in ordinary circumstances. My beloved child, don't skip this part, because the emotional heart of this fictional story unfolds here. That evening, while watching the stars appear one by one across the night sky, they reflected upon the person they had once believed they had lost forever. The memories no longer filled them with sadness. Instead, they inspired gratitude. They thanked God in this fictional story for every lesson learned through that relationship, every opportunity to grow in patience, every chance to practice forgiveness, and every moment that had strengthened their character. They realized that genuine love is never measured only by whether two people remain together. It is also measured by how deeply they encourage one another to become better human beings. Meanwhile, the other person in this fictional story was experiencing their own quiet awakening. During a peaceful evening walk, they reflected on the direction their life had taken. They recognized that every difficult season had prepared them to appreciate honesty more than appearances, humility more than pride, and peace more than temporary excitement. They no longer wanted relationships built upon fear, uncertainty, or unrealistic expectations. They desired friendships and future relationships rooted in trust, mutual respect, compassion, and open communication. That desire marked the beginning of a completely new chapter in their life. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this fictional story now reveals one of its greatest truths. Divine guidance, in this story, was never about forcing events to happen according to human plans. It was about gently shaping hearts until they became capable of living with greater wisdom, deeper love, and stronger faith. Sometimes the greatest blessing is not receiving everything we ask for immediately. Sometimes the blessing is becoming the kind of person who can receive life's gifts with humility, gratitude, and maturity when the right season arrives. As dawn appeared once again, painting the sky with breathtaking shades of gold, orange, and soft blue, they stepped into the new day carrying peaceful hearts. They no longer feared delays because they understood that timing often protects what is precious. They no longer questioned every closed door because they trusted that each step was teaching something valuable. Every sunrise became another reminder that hope is renewed daily, Every act of kindness carries eternal significance, and every faithful decision shapes a future filled with greater purpose. My beloved child, don't skip these closing words, because the final chapter of this fictional journey is now drawing near. The night of despair had become the dawn of purpose. The season of waiting had become the season of preparation. And as the first light stretched across the earth, both hearts walked forward with quiet confidence, no longer defined by fear or uncertainty but strengthened by faith, guided by compassion, and ready to embrace whatever beautiful chapter lay beyond the next sunrise. My beloved child, don't skip this chapter, because in this fictional story, the waiting was finally beginning to reveal its purpose. Listen carefully, because there comes a season when a person looks back and realizes that what once felt like endless delay was quietly preparing them for something far greater than they could have imagined. The heart that had once been filled with uncertainty now carried a peace that no circumstance could easily take away. They had learned that hope is strongest when it is rooted in faith, and that true strength is often born during the moments when no one else sees the battle taking place within. The dawn arrived wrapped in gentle light. The horizon glowed with shades of gold, silver, and soft blue as the world slowly awakened. They stepped outside into the cool morning air and listened to the birds welcoming another day. For the first time in many months, they did not rush ahead in search of answers. Instead, they stood still and appreciated the beauty already surrounding them. They realized that while they had spent so much time waiting for life to change, life had quietly been changing them. Their heart had become softer. Their patience had become deeper. Their faith had become steadier. The greatest miracle had been taking place inside them all along. Throughout the day, unexpected opportunities appeared before them. Someone who had once been distant reached out with kindness. An old misunderstanding found its way toward peaceful resolution. A conversation they never expected to have brought clarity instead of confusion. None of these moments seemed extraordinary on their own, yet together they reminded them that healing often arrives one small step at a time. They discovered that reconciliation, forgiveness, and renewed trust are rarely built through one dramatic event. They grow through consistent honesty, humility, and compassion practiced every single day. My beloved child, don't skip this part, because the emotional center of this fictional story quietly unfolds here. As evening settled across the landscape, they returned to the place where they had once believed all hope was gone. Looking across the peaceful horizon, they remembered every tear, every unanswered prayer, every sleepless night, and every moment they thought about giving up. Yet standing there now, they could honestly say they would not erase those difficult chapters. Those seasons had taught them resilience when they felt weak, gratitude when they felt empty, and forgiveness when bitterness seemed easier. They realized that the hardest chapters had become the strongest foundation beneath their feet. Meanwhile, another heart in this fictional story was reaching a similar understanding. They no longer wanted to build their future on fear, assumptions, or regret. Instead, they desired relationships shaped by respect, honest communication, patience, and mutual encouragement. They recognized that genuine love never demands perfection. It flourishes where people choose to grow together, extend grace during difficult moments, and celebrate each other's victories with sincere joy. That realization filled them with hope for whatever the future might hold. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this fictional story now reveals one of its most meaningful truths. Sometimes what we call divine guidance is experienced not through dramatic signs but through quiet moments that gently redirect our hearts toward what truly matters. A peaceful conversation instead of another argument. A forgiving spirit instead of lingering resentment. A grateful heart instead of constant complaint. A willingness to keep walking faithfully even when every answer has not yet arrived. Those quiet choices become the path upon which lasting peace is built. As another sunrise illuminated the horizon, they smiled with hearts free from burdens they had carried for far too long. They no longer believed they needed to know every detail of tomorrow before they could live fully today. They understood that every morning offers another chance to choose love over fear, humility over pride, service over selfishness, and hope over despair. Those daily choices became the greatest testimony of the transformation that had taken place within them. My beloved child, don't skip these closing words, because the final chapter of this fictional journey is now very close. The season of almost giving up had become a season of quiet victory. The silence that once felt unbearable had become the place where wisdom grew. The waiting that once seemed endless had become preparation for a future built upon faith, integrity, compassion, and enduring hope. And as the sun climbed higher into the morning sky, both hearts walked forward with peaceful confidence, knowing that every step they had taken, even the difficult ones, had brought them closer to the life they were meant to live, one faithful sunrise at a time. My beloved child, don't skip these final words, because every chapter of this fictional story has been leading to this beautiful conclusion. Listen carefully, because the greatest miracle in this journey was not that every question received an immediate answer or that every difficulty disappeared overnight. The greatest miracle was the quiet transformation of two hearts that chose faith over fear, forgiveness over bitterness, and hope over despair. By the end of their journey, they had become people whose lives reflected compassion, humility, honesty, and lasting peace. As the first light of a new morning spread across the horizon, the world seemed filled with quiet beauty. The birds welcomed the sunrise with joyful songs, the gentle breeze carried the fragrance of blooming flowers, and the golden light reminded them that every new day offers another opportunity to begin again. They stood together beneath the open sky. Not because every mystery had been solved, but because they had learned that peace does not come from controlling the future. Peace comes from living faithfully in the present, one step at a time. Looking back over everything they had experienced, they no longer saw only disappointment or delay. They saw preparation. Every season of waiting had taught patience. Every setback had revealed resilience. Every difficult conversation had shown them the value of honesty. Every moment of forgiveness had made their hearts lighter. They realized that what once seemed like obstacles had quietly become the foundation upon which a wiser and more compassionate future could be built. My beloved child, don't skip this part, because it contains the deepest lesson of this fictional story. There came a peaceful afternoon when they met once more, not with expectations or demands, but with gratitude. Their conversation was calm, sincere, and filled with mutual respect. They spoke honestly about the lessons they had learned, the mistakes they had grown from, and the hope they now carried into the future. They discovered that genuine love is never sustained by fear or pressure. It grows where truth is spoken with kindness, where forgiveness is offered freely, and where both people are willing to continue growing in wisdom and compassion. Whether their future meant walking side by side or encouraging one another from different paths, they both left that conversation with peaceful hearts. Nothing important remained unsaid. There was no bitterness left to carry, no resentment left to protect, and no fear left to control them. Instead, they carried gratitude for every lesson that had shaped their lives and every challenge that had helped them become stronger human beings. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this fictional story now shares its final truth. In this story, what seemed like God's intervention was not about forcing events to happen according to human expectations. It was about gently leading each person toward greater faith, deeper humility, stronger character, and a heart willing to choose love even when the road was uncertain. The greatest blessing was not simply finding another person. It was becoming someone who could love with patience, serve with compassion, forgive with sincerity, and live with unwavering integrity. As evening painted the sky with brilliant shades of gold, crimson, and violet, they looked toward the horizon with peaceful smiles. They no longer feared tomorrow because they had learned that every sunrise carries new mercy, every challenge carries a lesson, and every faithful step has purpose. The future no longer felt frightening. It felt full of possibility, because they had discovered that hope grows strongest in hearts that refuse to stop choosing kindness. My beloved child, remember these final words as this fictional journey comes to its close. Never believe that a difficult season is the end of your story. Sometimes the longest nights prepare us to appreciate the brightest mornings. Sometimes the greatest blessings begin with quiet acts of forgiveness, patience, and courage. Continue choosing honesty when fear invites silence. Continue choosing compassion when anger seems easier. Continue choosing gratitude when life feels uncertain. Those choices will shape a life filled with meaning. And so, as the final sunrise illuminated the earth with magnificent light, they stepped forward with grateful hearts. The burdens of yesterday had been replaced by the peace of today. Fear had given way to faith. Doubt had given way to hope. Their story ended not with extraordinary promises, but with something even more enduring, a life transformed by love, strengthened by perseverance, guided by faith, and dedicated to bringing light to others wherever the journey would lead. As they disappeared into the beauty of a new dawn, they knew this was not merely an ending. It was the beginning of a lifetime of walking in hope, sharing kindness, and trusting that every new sunrise carries the promise of another beautiful chapter.